Falling in love isn't random. Discover Jung's 2 invisible forces. Have you ever wondered why you keep falling for the same type of person, even when it ends badly every time? What if I told you there are invisible forces at work in your unconscious mind? Powerful archetypes that Jung discovered, silently directing your romantic choices without you even realizing it. These forces have been shaping your love life since before you had your first crush. And until you understand them, you'll remain trapped in patterns that leave you wondering why love feels like an unsolvable mystery. Today, I'm pulling back the curtain on the 2 most powerful Jungian forces governing your romantic attractions. Forces so fundamental to human experience that they've been encoded in our myths, stories, and dreams since the beginning of civilization. If you've ever looked at your relationship history and thought, "Why do I keep making the same mistakes?" This video might be the most important one you'll ever watch. Before we dive in, take a moment to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Jung's psychology goes deeper than most people realize, and our journey together is just beginning. Still with me? Good, because what I'm about to share isn't taught in relationship books or therapy sessions. This is the raw, unfiltered truth about why certain people magnetically draw you and while others leave you cold, even when logic suggests the opposite should be true. Let's begin with a question that cuts to the core of Jungian psychology. What if your type isn't really your choice at all? According to Carl Jung, one of the founding fathers of modern psychology, our romantic attractions are largely unconscious, driven by ancient psychological patterns that exist in what he called the collective unconscious. These patterns are represented by archetypes that influence every aspect of our lives, especially our romantic relationships. The first invisible force Jung identified is what he called the Anima in men and the Animus in women, the unconscious feminine and masculine aspects within each of us. When we fall in love, we're often projecting these inner aspects onto someone else. Think about it this way. Have you ever met someone and felt an immediate, almost supernatural connection, as if you've known them forever? That's not coincidence. It's your unconscious recognizing itself in another person. Jung would say you're not just falling for that person. You're falling for the projected image of your own unconscious. This is why initial attraction can feel so powerful, so magical, so destined. But here's where it gets complicated. This powerful attraction isn't always leading you toward wholeness and health. Sometimes it's reenacting unresolved childhood wounds. Let me explain how this works in practical terms. For men, the anima represents the feminine aspects of their psyche. This internal feminine image is shaped first by their mother and later by significant women in their lives. When a man projects his anima onto a woman, he experiences powerful attraction, but he's not seeing the real woman. He's seeing his own internal feminine ideal superimposed over her. For women, the animus represents masculine aspects of their psyche, initially shaped by their father. The animus projection works similarly, creating instant attraction that feels like fate but is actually an unconscious recognition of familiar patterns. This is why we often hear people say, "I just knew they were the one the moment I saw them." That immediate recognition isn't magic. It's your unconscious mind recognizing familiar patterns that resonate with your internal archetypes. But here's the crucial insight Jung offered. These projections aren't sustainable. Eventually, reality breaks through, and you begin to see the actual person behind your projection. This is typically when relationships enter their first major crisis. Pay close attention to what comes next, because understanding this dynamic can save you years of painful relationship patterns. The moment when projection breaks down is actually the beginning of authentic love, if you know how to navigate it. When the initial projection fades, many people make one of 2 mistakes. They leave the relationship, believing they've fallen out of love. They try to force their partner to conform to their projected image. But Jung suggested a third path. Use the attraction as an opportunity for self-knowledge. The qualities that drew you to your partner reveal aspects of yourself that need integration. This is profound. Your attractions aren't random. They're messages from your unconscious about your own psychological development. Let me give you a concrete example. James kept falling for creative, free-spirited women who seemed to embody a sense of artistic freedom he secretly craved. When these relationships inevitably collapsed because he tried to impose structure and control, he was baffled by the pattern. Through Jungian analysis, James realized he was projecting his own repressed creative spirit, his anima, onto these women. His real work wasn't finding the right woman, but integrating his own creativity and spontaneity into his conscious personality. The women weren't the solution to his inner tension. They were messengers highlighting what he needed to develop within himself. This is the first invisible force Jung identified: projection of the Anima/Animus. It creates the initial magnetic pull of attraction, but sustainable love requires withdrawing these projections and seeing both yourself and your partner clearly. Now let's explore the second invisible force that Jung discovered, possibly even more powerful than the first. While the Anima/Animus projection tends to create positive attraction, this second force often manifests as either intense attraction or powerful aversion. I'm talking about the shadow. In Jungian psychology, the shadow contains all the parts of ourselves that we've repressed, denied, or hidden, the aspects of our personality that don't fit with our conscious self-image. And just like with the Anima/Animus, we project these shadow elements onto others. What I'm about to share might completely transform how you understand your difficult relationships. When you find yourself having an unusually strong emotional reaction to someone, whether positive or negative, pay attention. Your shadow is speaking to you. Shadow projection in relationships works like this. The qualities you most despise in others are often the very qualities you've repressed in yourself. And conversely, the traits you're mysteriously drawn to might represent disowned positive aspects of your shadow. Let's make this concrete with an example. Sarah prided herself on being responsible, disciplined, and in control. Throughout her life, she found herself mysteriously attracted to bad boys, men who lived by their own rules and expressed their emotions freely, especially anger. These relationships were intense, but ultimately destructive. From a Jungian perspective, Sarah wasn't just attracted to these men. She was attracted to her own repressed spontaneity, emotional expressiveness, and capacity for justified anger. The qualities she couldn't acknowledge in herself became magnetically attractive when she saw them embodied by someone else. Here's the key insight. Your shadow projections reveal the parts of yourself that need integration just as much as your Anima/Animus projections do. When we fail to recognize shadow projections, we end up in relationships characterized by intense initial attraction followed by equally intense conflict, recurring arguments about the same issues, a sense of being triggered by your partner in deeply personal ways, feeling that your partner embodies qualities you simultaneously despise and envy. Jung believed that romantic relationships offer our greatest opportunity for growth precisely because they activate these projections so powerfully. But there's a catch. This growth only happens when we take responsibility for our projections instead of blaming our partners for the discomfort they cause us. When you catch yourself thinking, "I can't stand how they always," or "why do they have to be so?" these are clues pointing to your shadow. The qualities that irritate you most in your partner often reflect disowned aspects of yourself. Now that we understand the two invisible forces, Anima/Animus projection and shadow projection, let's learn how to recognize them in your own relationship patterns. The first step is to examine your relationship history with honest self-reflection. Look for recurring themes. Do you keep choosing partners with similar qualities? Do your relationships tend to end for similar reasons? Are there traits you're consistently attracted to that eventually become problematic? These patterns aren't coincidences. They're your unconscious mind trying to work through unresolved psychological material. Jung would say that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Here's where things get practical. I'm going to give you specific techniques to identify your own projection patterns, because awareness is the first step toward transformation. Start by creating what I call a relationship mirror, a written inventory of your significant romantic relationships. For each relationship, answer these questions. What initially attracted me to this person? What qualities did I admire most in them? What eventually became intolerable about them? What patterns do I see across multiple relationships? When you examine this inventory through a Jungian lens, you'll begin to see how your Anima/Animus projections created the initial attraction, and how your shadow projections likely contributed to the relationship's challenges. For example, if you consistently fall for partners who are emotionally unavailable, Jung would suggest examining your own relationship with vulnerability and emotional expression. Do you perhaps admire their self-containment because you struggle with feeling overwhelmed by emotions? Or are you attempting to heal childhood wounds related to emotional neglect by trying to earn love from someone who withhold it? Another powerful exercise is to examine your triggers, those moments when your emotional reaction to your partner seems disproportionate to the situation. Jung would view these triggers as shadow material being activated. When your partner's behavior elicits an unusually strong reaction, ask yourself, what disowned part of myself might I be seeing in them? For instance, if your partner's assertiveness triggers intense anger in you, consider whether you've repressed your own healthy assertiveness. Your reaction might be less about their behavior and more about your discomfort with that quality in yourself. The patterns revealed through these exercises aren't random. They're meaningful communications from your unconscious about your own psychological development. Now we come to the heart of Jung's revolutionary approach to relationships: the difference between projection and integration. Most relationship advice focuses on finding the right person. But Jung's psychology suggests something far more profound. The purpose of relationships isn't to find someone who completes you. It's to become complete within yourself. This isn't just poetic language. Jung outlined specific psychological processes through which we can integrate the qualities we typically project onto others. Listen carefully, because what I'm about to share contradicts most conventional relationship wisdom. Your attractions aren't primarily about finding the one. They're about finding yourself. Integration is the process of consciously incorporating disowned aspects of your psyche into your conscious personality. Instead of projecting these qualities onto others, you develop them within yourself. For example, if you're attracted to confident partners, work on developing your own confidence. If you're triggered by your partner's emotional expressions, practice healthier emotional expression yourself. If you admire your partner's creativity, nurture your own creative impulses. This doesn't mean you should stop appreciating these qualities in others. Rather, it means recognizing that your attraction to these qualities is a signpost pointing toward your own psychological development. Jung called this process individuation, becoming the complete individual you were born to be by integrating all aspects of your psyche. Here's how integration transforms relationships. You stop expecting partners to embody qualities you need to develop yourself. You reduce projection, allowing you to see others more clearly. You become less reactive when triggered, as you've made peace with your shadow. You choose partners based on compatibility rather than unconscious projections. You create relationships based on wholeness rather than psychological need. This doesn't mean perfect relationships. Jung himself acknowledged that intimate relationships would always involve some degree of projection. But conscious relationships involve recognizing projections when they occur and taking responsibility for them. The difference is profound. In unconscious relationships, we blame others for our discomfort. In conscious relationships, we see our reactions as information about ourselves. Think about your most challenging relationship dynamic. What if, instead of seeing it as a problem with your partner, you viewed it as an opportunity to develop an underdeveloped aspect of yourself? Jung believed that healthy relationship development follows a predictable path that mirrors our individual psychological development. Let's explore the stages of this journey. Stage 1. Projection and infatuation. This is where most relationships begin, with powerful projections creating an almost magical sense of connection. During this stage, we see in the other person what we need to see. The biochemistry of attraction reinforces these projections, creating a sense of destiny. Stage 2. Disillusionment and conflict. As reality intrudes on our projections, we experience disappointment. Our partner isn't who we imagine them to be. This stage often involves conflict as we unconsciously try to force our partner to conform to our projected image. Stage 3. The conscious relationship. If both partners are committed to growth, the relationship can evolve into what Jung called a conscious relationship, one characterized by the gradual withdrawal of projections and the development of true intimacy based on seeing and accepting each other's authentic selves. Stage 4. Individuation within relationship. The highest form of relationship in Jung's model is one where both partners support each other's individuation process. Rather than completing each other, they challenge each other to become complete individually. Most relationships never progress beyond stage 2. We either leave when disillusionment sets in, or we remain in conflict, never understanding the true source of our disappointment. But those who navigate this journey successfully discover something remarkable. As projections diminish, genuine love emerges. Not the intoxicating but unstable love of projection, but a steadier, deeper love based on true recognition of another human being. This journey isn't easy. It requires confronting parts of ourselves we've spent a lifetime avoiding. It means taking responsibility for our reactions rather than blaming our partners for causing them. But the rewards are extraordinary. Jung described it as moving from falling in love to standing in love, a love not based on unconscious needs, but on conscious choice. Consider the implications. What if the purpose of your romantic difficulties isn't to find someone better, but to become more whole yourself? Now let's explore how to apply Jung's insights in practical ways to transform your current or future relationships. The first step is developing what Jung called active imagination, a practice of conscious dialogue with the unconscious aspects of yourself. This isn't passive daydreaming, but a structured approach to engaging with your inner world. Here's a simple active imagination exercise for relationship insights. Find a quiet space where you won't be disturbed. Close your eyes and visualize your Anima/Animus as a distinct personality. Ask this figure what qualities it's seeking in your romantic partners. Listen for the response without judgment or censorship. Journal about the insights that emerge. This exercise often reveals surprising information about the unconscious patterns driving your attractions. Another powerful practice is shadow work specifically focused on relationship triggers. Identify a recurring conflict in your relationship. Note your emotional reactions during these conflicts. Ask yourself, what disowned quality might I be projecting onto my partner? Consider how developing this quality in yourself might transform the conflict. For example, if you're consistently angered by your partner's independence, you might discover that you've disowned your own healthy independence, perhaps due to childhood experiences that made self-reliance feel dangerous or selfish. By developing appropriate independence within yourself, you may find that your partner's independence no longer triggers you, and the conflict naturally resolves. Jung also emphasized the importance of dreams in understanding relationship dynamics. Pay particular attention to dreams about your partner, as these often reveal projections you're making. If you dream of your partner betraying you, for instance, the dream may not be predictive, but rather revealing something about your own capacity for betrayal or your unacknowledged fears of abandonment. Another practical application involves consciously working with the opposites within yourself. Jung believed that psychological health involves holding tensions between opposing qualities rather than identifying exclusively with one pole. If you identify strongly as logical and rational, for instance, developing comfort with emotions and intuition creates greater internal balance and typically transforms your relationship dynamics. This isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about becoming more of who you truly are by integrating disowned aspects of yourself. Beyond individual psychology, Jung identified archetypal patterns that structure romantic relationships across cultures and throughout history. Understanding these patterns can help you recognize when you're caught in archetypal dynamics rather than relating authentically. The first archetypal pattern is the mother/son dynamic, where one partner takes the nurturing, responsible role while the other remains somewhat childlike and dependent. This pattern often feels comfortable initially, but ultimately prevents both partners from achieving full maturity. The father/daughter dynamic involves one partner taking an authoritative, protective stance, while the other remains in a position of admiration and compliance. Again, this dynamic can feel natural, but ultimately constrains both individuals. The victim/rescuer dynamic occurs when one partner consistently needs saving while the other derives their sense of worth from being the savior. This pattern creates a painful interdependence that prevents true partnership. The hero/goddess dynamic involves idealizing one's partner as perfect or divine. While this can feel transcendent, it ultimately places impossible pressure on the idealized partner while preventing the idealizing partner from developing the projected qualities within themselves. The wounded healer/patient dynamic emerges when one partner takes on the role of psychological healer while the other remains in need of healing. This can prevent the patient from developing their own strength while burdening the healer with excessive responsibility. These archetypal patterns aren't inherently negative. They represent collective human experiences encoded in our shared unconscious. The problem arises when we become unconsciously trapped in these dynamics, rather than relating from our authentic individuality. Recognition is the first step toward transformation. When you notice yourself enacting one of these archetypal patterns, ask, what need is this pattern meeting for me? What fear does it protect me from facing? How might I meet this need more consciously? What would our relationship look like beyond this pattern? Moving beyond archetypal patterns doesn't mean abandoning all structure in relationships. Rather, it means consciously choosing which aspects of these patterns serve your growth and discarding those that limit you. The goal isn't to avoid archetypes entirely. That would be impossible. But to engage with them consciously rather than being unconsciously controlled by them.